To discuss all this further, I'm joined by our international affairs editor, Kediven Gorgistani. It's great to see you. So, a seventh night of strikes in a row, but Iran seems to be able to counter what the U.S. is throwing at them.
Yes, absolutely. Iran really showing that despite the strikes from the Americans, they still have at least some capability, at least enough to create some problems for countries in the region. Obviously, this night was very hard for Kuwait, which was the hardest hit. You mentioned some of those targets there, the oil facility, the water desalination plant, a power plant, but also military installations linked to the United States. It has to be said that this is the second night in a row that Kuwaiti water desalination plants and power plants are being hit, but that was not the only country that was hit overnight. Bahrain and Jordan were also targets, especially areas on or near bases that host U.S. military, either aircrafts or actual military personnel. So more military targets there. One country that was struck that hadn't been struck in the past 3 months or so was Saudi Arabia. There hasn't been yet a confirmation, neither on the Iranian side nor on the Saudi side, but there were sirens that were heard near Al-Harj, which is close to the Prince Sultan Air Base, which hosts U.S. military, and also, which is very interesting and shows how far the Iranians can strike, there were sirens near Yambu, which is on the Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia. So really Iran showing how far they can still strike, despite the Americans saying that they have destroyed quite a bit of their ballistic and drone capabilities. And there's a warning by a senior military advisor to the Iranian supreme leader: Iran will no longer limit itself to retaliatory tit-for-tat responses. No border will be safe, warning that Iran will resume full-scale offensive operations if the Americans continue with their strikes.
And now, over the past couple of days, the escalation is not just the scale of the strikes, as you were mentioning there, but also the type of sites that have been targeted. So we've seen some differences happening.
Yes, and the growing concern, of course, on both sides is actually the fact that you're starting to see increasingly the targeting of civilian infrastructure, including vital elements like those desalination plants that we were talking about. And Kuwait is really a big example of that, because the plants that were hit, they bring about 90% of the country's drinking water. So if those are damaged, that could be a real problem for the civilian population. Iran itself also raising that concern, saying that U.S. strikes were not simply targeting sort of a military infrastructure, but rather also desalination plants, also bridges, also tunnels, all of these that are considered as civilian infrastructure. And the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council, they reacted to Iran's strikes as saying this: Iran's actions constitute a highly dangerous escalation, a grave violation of international law and the UN Charter, as well as war crimes, saying that it requires international accountability. But so far, no word on those strikes on Iranian civilian infrastructure. There was a comment by the United Nations Secretary General who expressed his concerns, this time on on attacks on civilian infrastructure, both in Iran and in the broader region.
All right, thank you so much. It looks like for the moment this is going to continue for a little bit longer. Again, thank you so much, Kediven, for keeping us updated. That's our international affairs editor, Kediven Gorgistani.